Old cars had a kind of presence that is hard to explain to anyone who has only driven modern cars. It was not just about going from point A to point B, it was about feeling, sound, smell, details, and personality. Today we have cars that are faster, more fuel efficient, safer, and packed with technology. But many people feel that something was lost along the way. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about. In this video, I am going to show you 7 things that existed in old cars, especially classic American ones, and that have practically disappeared from today's cars. Some disappeared because of safety, others because of cost, and others because the world changed. And I want you to pay attention, because I am sure that at least one of these things will hit you with that feeling of nostalgia, even if you have never driven an old car. And tell me here, what was the most classic car you've ever seen up close, or the one you would most like to own? Now, let's move on to the first on the list. First item, the full-width bench seats. In old cars, especially American models from the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, the front seat was very different from what we see today. Instead of 2 separate seats, there was a single full-width bench that stretched across the entire interior of the car. This allowed 3 people to sit comfortably in the front, something completely normal at the time. It was not uncommon to see families traveling this way, friends sharing the space, or couples sitting very close together. The car had a much more social feeling, almost like a sofa on wheels, reinforcing the idea that driving was a shared experience. Over the years, this concept began to disappear. The introduction of the central console, cup holders, larger gear shifters, and especially new safety systems completely changed car interiors. The 3-point seatbelt, airbags, and impact regulations required individual seats. Today, cars are much safer and more functional, but also more isolated, each person in their own space with less physical closeness. Full-width bench seats may not be practical by today's standards, but they represent a time when cars were simpler, closer, and, for many people, much more human. Second item, pop-up headlights. Pop-up headlights are one of the most iconic design elements of classic cars, especially from the 1970s, 1980s, and the early 1990s. They were hidden inside the bodywork and only appeared when turned on, creating that unmistakable motion of the car opening and closing its eyes. For many people, this detail alone already gave the vehicle personality. It was something that drew attention, conveyed sportiness, and made any car look more futuristic for its time. Despite being extremely stylish, pop-up headlights began to disappear because of new safety laws. In the event of a pedestrian impact, they could cause more damage, in addition to having mechanical systems that required constant maintenance. With advances in aerodynamics and modern lighting technology, manufacturers shifted their focus to fixed headlights that are more efficient and safer. Today, cars illuminate the road better than ever, but they have lost that small visual spectacle that turned the simple act of turning on the headlights into a special moment for the person behind the wheel. Third item, triangular vent windows. Before air conditioning became a common feature in cars, manufacturers needed to find other ways to keep the interior ventilated, especially on hotter days. That is when triangular vent windows, also known as vent windows, appeared. These small windows were located at the front part of the doors and could be opened at different angles, directing air straight into the car while it was in motion. It was a simple system, but extremely efficient for its time. In addition to being functional, these windows added a special charm to the design of classic cars. Many drivers remember carefully adjusting the vent window to find the perfect airflow without having to roll the main window all the way down. With the advancement of automotive air conditioning, digital climate control, and improved sound insulation, this feature became unnecessary and was eventually eliminated. Today, comfort is greater, but that simple, almost handcrafted mechanical interaction disappeared along with these windows. Fourth item, the cigarette lighter. For decades, the cigarette lighter was an absolutely standard feature in cars, especially in the United States. It came from the factory without question, regardless of the model or category of the vehicle. At that time, smoking inside the car was socially accepted and very common, so it made sense for the car to already be prepared for that. The lighter sat there on the dashboard, ready to be pushed in, heat up, and light a cigarette in just a few seconds. Over time, people's habits began to change. Anti-smoking campaigns grew, technology advanced, and cars started to follow a new lifestyle. The space once occupied by the cigarette lighter was repurposed for 12-volt power outlets, USB ports, and more recently, wireless phone chargers. This shows how cars evolve alongside society. They do not change only because of technology or safety, but also because they reflect the behavior and priorities of each generation. Fifth item, full-size spare tire. In old cars, the spare tire was not just a temporary solution, it was a real tire. It had the same size and, in many cases, the same model as the other 4 tires on the car. This gave the driver much greater peace of mind, especially on long trips, remote roads, or in regions with limited mechanical support. If a tire went flat, you could simply change it and continue the journey normally, without speed or distance limitations. Today, the reality is very different. Many modern cars come with a thin spare tire, known as a temporary spare, or no spare at all, offering only a repair kit. This change happened to reduce weight, save trunk space, and lower production costs. Even though it makes sense from the manufacturer's point of view, many drivers miss the safety and confidence that a full-size spare tire provided. It was another example of how old cars prioritized robustness and self-sufficiency, even if that meant sacrificing a bit of space. Sixth item, carbureted engines. Before electronic fuel injection became widespread, the engines of older cars ran on carburetors. This system was responsible for mixing air and fuel before combustion, all in a completely mechanical way. In American cars, especially classic models with V8 engines, the carburetor was part of the car's identity. The sound, throttle response, and even the smell of fuel were different, creating a more direct connection between the driver and the machine. As technology advanced, carburetors were replaced by electronic fuel injection systems, which are more efficient, more economical, and less polluting. Today, cars start more easily, consume less fuel, and require fewer manual adjustments. On the other hand, many enthusiasts feel that this evolution took away some of the soul of cars. In the past, understanding the engine was part of the driving experience. Now, almost everything is controlled by sensors and computers, making the car smarter, but also more distant from the driver. Seventh item, manual crank windows. For a long time, manual crank windows were the absolute standard in cars. It did not matter whether the car was basic or more expensive. Turning the crank to raise or lower the window was part of every driver's routine. It was a simple, mechanical, and extremely durable system. It rarely caused problems, and when it did, the repair was easy and inexpensive. For many people, this detail perfectly represents the philosophy of old cars: less technology, fewer things to break, and more everyday reliability. Over the years, power windows stopped being a luxury and became a standard feature. Today, all it takes is pressing a button and everything happens automatically, bringing more comfort and convenience. However, this evolution also introduced new types of failures, such as burned-out electric motors, faulty switches, and electronic issues. Manual crank windows may seem outdated, but they symbolize a time when cars were built to last and to work with the least possible complexity. And now, I want to hear from you. Which of these things from old cars do you miss the most? Is there something I did not mention that you think should be on this list? Write it in the comments, because I read everything. If you like classic cars, automotive nostalgia, and understanding how cars have changed over time, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because every week there is content like this here. And share this video with that friend who loves classic cars as much as you do, because for sure he will remember at least one of these things.